Hello everyone, my name is Saib and this is the second episode of this series. And in the previous one we talked about what Canvas is, and we talked about the graphics APIs in the two modes, the retained one and the immediate one. And we know that Canvas is an immediate mode API. That means that we have to issue the drawing commands directly from the application. Each new frame is drawn. So today we will actually issue some drawing commands in order to draw lines and curvy lines, or what's known as Bezier curves. Okay, so if you want to draw any shape or any line inside this canvas area, the first thing that we have to do is pick up an initial point or a starting point. So let's say that I want to start from this one in the middle of this canvas area. So we have a 500 by 500 canvas. So if we specify the starting point to be on 250 by 250 to be actually nearly the middle of this canvas area. So this is done by going to the context and move to. So if I move to 250 for the x coordinates and 250 for the y one, we can actually now think of this as that you have a virtual bin, and you just put the bin on this certain point, in which is the 250 by 250. Now to draw a straight line from this point to any other point, let's say that we want to go from this point to 0 and 0, which is the top left, 0 for the x coordinates and 0 for the y. We have just to call the function which is called line2. So line2. Now we can see that the line didn't actually show up, even though that we moved from this initial point, in which is 250 by 250, to the 0 and 0, which is the top left. That's why we have to inform the canvas to actually show that line, or to just outline or highlight that line. And this is done simply by calling the stroke method. So by saving this one and refreshing, we can see that this line is now gets drawn. We went from 250 and by 250 to 0 and 0, which is the top left. So let's say that I want to move from this one until the end of until the end of this canvas area from the y-axis. So this, if you looked at this point, you can see that this is 0 for the y-axis, since as we said before, the canvas uses the inverted Cartesian, which means that the x coordinate values increases from the left to the right, and the y increases from the top to the bottom. So as we can see here, is actually 0 for the y-axis, and this is the end of the x-axis, so it's 500. Because if you remember, we specified the width to be 500 by 500 for the canvas. So yeah, let's say that I want to move to here, so we can simply just call the context line 2, and we can say 500 by 0. You can see that it actually got drawn, but you can't see it because of the border. So let's say that I want to go now back to where I started, to this point, in which is 250 by 250. So I can just say context and call line2 and go to 250 and 250. But that's something that you shouldn't do, since you're actually closing this shape. There's a good way to finish this. We can actually just call context close path. This close path is going to take you to exactly where you started. We started at 250 by 250, then it's going to go back to this one. So we have a stroke in which is in black color. Let's say that I want to change this color. We can call the some of the drawing properties, in which is the stroke style. So in the stroke style, we can actually specify the color. So if I want the color of the stroke to be white, to be, let's say, red, to actually see this one, so we can see that now the stroke is red. We can use the hex code, in which is 6 digits for red and green and blue. So if I want it in red, I can just say FF for the color red. This is the same as, so if I want blue one, I can just specify FF for at the end, the last 2 digits for the RGB. I'm gonna make an episode about colors, so just until now you can use just the keywords like red and white and everything. So yeah, we can see a blue highlighted shape now. Let's say that I want to fill this area. We can call the fill function as well. So it's going to be fill. Okay, By default, the fill is going to be black, same as the stroke before. So if I actually want to change the color of the fill, same as stroke style, I'm going to use fill style. So I'm just going to go to context and call fill style and specify a color. So let's say that I want to fill this one with blue again, same as blue. So I can just say blue, or I can specify the hex as in this way. So yeah, this is simply how we draw this rectangle shape. So let's say that let's just remove the fill so we can actually see stroke. Let's say that now now we can see that when we close the path, the canvas took us to where we actually started, in which is 250 and 250. Let's say that I want to move this from this point to the end of the canvas. At this point where I'm actually pointing at, you can see that this is 500 in the y-axis, and 500 for the x-axis, which is the last point in this canvas area. So we can just go, and since we're not closing this path now, or you can just keep it, it's okay. You can just go to context and line to 500 and 500. You can see that I went to this point. Okay, so let's go back to this side just for more clarification. So I can just go to this one, context, and let's just go line 2. This point is simply 0 for the x-axis and 500 for the y-axis. You can see I'm increasing only in the y-axis. So I can just say 0 and 500. We can see that we moved to here. Okay, another thing, we can actually specify the line width. You can see this is just 1 pixel. I can just increase that by saying context dot line width, and I can give it a value just 10, for instance. You can see that now it's at 10 pixels, the width of the line. So yeah, that is simply straight lines and how we can do straight lines. So now let's talk about curvy lines or Bezier curves. We have two types of curves, the quadratic one and a cubic one. So the difference between quadratic and cubic, so let's just remove everything and just clear our canvas. Okay, let's keep the stroke since we're actually drawing another line, but a curvy one. So let's say that we want to draw a quadratic curve, which is simply just 2 points, in which is the starting point and the ending point, with one control point. So I'm just gonna pick up an initial point to start, which is gonna be, okay, move to say 50 and 100, for instance. Okay, this 50 and 100 is exactly, if you just try to visualize it, you can see that it goes 50 in the y-axis and it goes 100 for the x-axis. So maybe it's going to be here. Then I want to do a quadratic curve, in which is a curvy line, not a straight one. So I can call the quadratic curve function or method. So we can just say quadratic curve 2. Now in the quadratic curve 2, we have a control point, x coordinate, and the control point and the y coordinate for the control point, and this is for the ending point. Since the starting one is 50 and 100, we have to specify the x and y coordinates for the ending point. So let's say that I want to let's give it just some random values, say 200 and 400, 500, and to exactly visualize this one, you can see that we have a curvy line. So how this exactly happened is that this is our initial point, in which is 550, 550 for the y-axis and 100 for the x-axis, and then this is the ending point, in which is 500 and 500 for the x-axis, which is, as you can see, this is 500 for the x-axis, the end of the canvas for the x side, and 100 for the y-axis. So, and this control point is, so consider this as a straight line, and this control point is like we actually just pulled that line backward. So you can see that we actually made it like curvy line. So yeah, simply these are the coordinates for the control point, in which is this one, and this is the ending point. So yeah, now let's talk about more a sophisticated curve, in which uses 2 control points, which is the cubic one, or it's called the Bezier curve. Now this one has maybe like 2 ups and downs, or like 2 curves at the same line. So you can see that we have 2 control points and 2 control which is are the x and y for the first one and x and y for the second one, and this is the ending point coordinates. So let's give it a random values as before to actually visualize and see the difference between quadratic and the cubic one. Okay, so 50 and 200, and we can go to 400 again. Let's pick the ending point to be the same. Okay, so what exactly happened in here is that this curve, this is the first control point, and the second one is the second curve is controlled by the second control point. So let's say that I want to pull this further. I can go down in the y-axis, in which is here. We can just say this one 400. I can go to 500. You're gonna see that it actually got pulled down. So yeah, same goes for this one. If I want to pull that further up, we can just increase the y-axis, or decrease it, sorry, because it's the inverted one. So we can just say 10, and you can see that it got pulled up. So yeah, simply that's the difference between a quadratic and a Bezier curve. And we can, let's say that I want to fill this one. Let's just close this shape in order to actually fill it and see the filled color in it. So I can just say, now I'm at the ending point. My virtual bin is at the ending point. Let's say that I want to move down to the end of the canvas. So I can just say context dot line 2, and I can go to 500 and 500 simply. As you can see now, we went to 500 and 500. So let's say that I want to move to this point, in which is this is 500 for the y-axis, but still 50 for the x-axis. So I can just go to context line 2, 50 for the x, and I'm going down further to the last point in the y-axis, which is 500, since we specified the width and height to be 500 by 500. So as you can see now, we went here. So now I can go with line 2 and specify the initial point, in which is 50 and 100. But an easier way, as I said, is to use close path, context close path. And yeah, now we closed our shape. We can actually fill this one by calling the fill method. So just say now I got filled, and applying the drawing properties again. So let's say that I want the filled color to be red, for instance. I can just say red. Nice. Now I can just go to increasing the line width in order to see the stroke more clear. So let's say line width 10. Right, so now we have this weird shape. It's more of a curvy, wavy shape. So yeah, we can change the stroke by calling the stroke style, and I can go with a blue one, so we can just specify the hex for that one. Yep. So yeah, we have this shape now. Now you should bear in mind that after anything that you've drawn and you didn't actually call fill or stroke is not going to be displayed in the canvas, because we have to, as I said, issue a drawing command to the canvas just to specify that we actually want to see this filled shape or outlined or filled. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. So if I just saved and refreshed again, okay, and everything that we actually do. So now so let's say that we actually stopped at this point, in which is 50 and 100. Let's say that now that I want to draw a line to 0 and 0, which is the top left, so I can just call context and line 2 and 0 and 0. See, we didn't see that line because stroke is called before that one. So you should bear in mind with the order of calling these functions. So now if we want to actually see this line, we have to call stroke again. Yeah. Or we can just move line 2 before stroke and just keep it that way. You can just save and refresh that one. Yeah, it's gonna be done same as just like we expected. So yeah, just remove that and keep it with our shape. So that is simply it for lines and curvy lines, which is the Bezier curves, and I'll see you in the next one.